down there.
It's good.
Good. All right, welcome to the Planning Commission meeting on March 6th, 2014. And hello to your guest. And we have minutes in your packet that need to be approved. Anybody have any questions on the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Second.
I'll second, but we're in 2024, not
I said
2014.
2024.
And you said 2014.
I'm 10 years behind.
I thought I messed up on the
I
agenda.
wish I would go back 10 years, I'd be a lot younger, right? Okay. Sorry about that.
That's
Thank you
all
for
right.
correcting. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. All right, Timmy, you have anything?
No.
Liz?
No.
Yeah, I know you're coming up. Julie, you have anything to say? Bruce? Good to go.
Why don't we?
You want to jump?
Yeah, Aaron's here to do a subdivision
We're
waiver.
going to jump across with your
Yeah,
minutes.
so
Say we're
come
going to
up
look at the Casma Valley Ventures waiver
Yeah,
that's
let
in
me
your package.
bring up
So,
the
go ahead. Aaron, you want to explain what you're doing here?
Okay, basically there's a 2-acre lot down on Old New Germany Road that Castleman River Ventures, the property owner, wants to do a split on. It actually has frontage on the old Jennings Railroad, but it also has a 20-foot easement that comes in along the trailer there on the northwest side, coming back down from 68, from the direction of 68, but it comes off of New Germany. You can see that there's a waterway that runs there on the southeast side of the property that basically kind of cuts off any future split, plus their properties that are to the south have already been subdivided, and they have access via that road that runs up to Old New Germany going to the northeast. So what we're wanting to do is just split this one lot, it's 2.3 acres or so, but because there's a question about their access coming along the trailer, it's actually coming through a 20-foot easement. So when Chad and I were discussing originally, he said you have to get a waiver, talking about existing right-of-way widths. But then he also pointed out that this would qualify as a major subdivision because you're doing an extension or a new road. In doing some digging, I found out that there's actually, this is a platted road from a 1914, there's a deed from 1914 that references the easement, and there's the roadway with the road going through it. We're actually parcel 3, you can see Schoolhouse Run over on the right-hand side. So this is already an existing road with the deeded easement. So what we're trying to do is get away from the major subdivision requirements and just do this as a minor, because we're splitting one lot. There isn't any future development issues. It's kind of an existing road. It also has frontage on the railroad right of way, so it's kind of a peculiar and uncommon situation. So that's what we're basically asking, if we could do this as a minor subdivision instead of jumping through all the hoops to make it a major.
So as far as I look at these, I just look and see, is an existing road in our system? So you might have old existing platted roads, you might have situations where there's a gravel cartway out there, but I just look and see, is it something we have as a named road, something that serves more than 2 people? So right now we've just got that single wide trailer lot right now that has a driveway for it up here, and that's all I saw. So as soon as I see 2 more, that kicks it into 3 people, and it's a major subdivision. So this does have some unique circumstances with it. The major subdivision carries with it requirement for a road plan, HOA documents. You'd have to have a turnaround at the end of the road and have to have this in a 30-foot right-of-way. So the 30-foot right-of-way is kind of a separate issue.
Right.
They have a deeded 20-foot, so this is somewhat of a 2-pronged waiver request. One, it says if a subdivision is planned that can't meet the minimum right-of-way requirements, the Planning Commission can grant a waiver for that, as long as it's found that the access, utilities, everything can be safely put in the smaller right-of-way. And then the second part of this would be asking for this to just be treated like a minor subdivision. This would more or less be a driveway serving all 3 of those. I think, Aaron, am I correct that this whole area is owned by the same people now, so they do have frontage through on
Yes.
Old New Germany Road up here
Right,
as well?
and the utilities, when we're talking about the right-of-way width, making sure there's access for utilities, there's actually a public sewer easement on the old Jennings Railroad, and public sewer runs through there. So we don't even need to get access through the access easement for the utilities. The utilities are gonna be on the railroad. You can see that sewer valve just above your hand right there. You can see there's already a sewer valve in place for this property. We just need to add one more along the railroad center line so we could get both of them, do wells on the property, and they just wanna do 2 small rental cabins down closer to the river, but up out of the floodplain. So there's a limit on future development potential on out the road, which is, you can see that waterway coming down through there, and there's access on the other lots. So it's kind of a unique situation. It's not like with duplicate access and a restricted width, so. Any questions?
So the first one is to grant, the first part would be granting the waiver because the existing right of way deeded 20.
Yeah, I think that's one decision you'll make, and then the rest of it will be based on those other major subdivision conditions.
I mean, anybody have any opinion on it? Let's talk about that first on the 20-foot deeded. It'd be hard to go back and,
Yeah, Craig Ingram provided some information. He researched it and felt that they had sufficient right-of-way access and that allowed them to subdivide that and use that right-of-way access. That was one of my questions to him. So he did state that that was the case, but it's just not wide enough.
Sierra.
This, like, does the trailer have an existing address?
Yes, it does.
Okay, then I guess my question on that one is, like, does that driveway get a road name? Because it's 3 addresses.
Yeah, and that's part of how all this goes together, the addressing, here's the aerial. Yeah, so this was the trailer right now that is addressed.
Mhm.
And that it's hard to see, that driveway is in here somewhere, and this is the piece being subdivided.
And you can see this road coming down to these others. So everything kind of to the south is a moot point. We're not talking about extending it down like the road that's shown on those old Castleman Estates plats that showed that road running all the way down through there. It's pretty much cut off, and those are being accessed by that road now. I'd say the bridge that crossed that waterway went out, so they just came down through those.
Does that roadway have a name already?
No, it's not a named road in our
It's a
system.
driveway.
Yeah, it's just a driveway, just one person. I look back in our original 97 list of all the properties, and it's just addressed off old New Germany right now.
I was wondering if it had something from that 1914.
Yeah, I just look at 97, so if it's something old and historic, it's somewhat irrelevant to me. I'm just looking at what we had in 97 as our road roster to see if it's an existing road. Ms. Sierra mentioned it kicks in road naming once you have 3 and the major subdivision standards.
Would I heard you say about cabins, they're looking at renting these, they're looking at the family's gonna keep them, or the family's building a cabin, or what?
I mean, they haven't told me what they're planning on doing. They said they want to put 2 little cabins down there. I suspect there's probably a greater than average chance those are going to be rentals. But I don't know. I mean, like Chad was saying, major subdivision, HOA documents and all that stuff, I don't know that this merits a major subdivision, HOA documents. And then the driveway, you got 600 feet from the property line out to Old New Germany, so they would have to go through it and bring that up to county standards to meet the road standards as a major, whereas they could just.
Right. I understand, I mean, the big thing is it's already deeded a 20-foot right of way, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Kinda hard to
Mm-hmm.
go back and say,
Right.
Yeah, we added that, I think, in 2010, because we had some of these situations, and the idea was if it doesn't meet, we'll let you guys take a look at it. But I think the intent was to have a forum to look, to make sure it still met access and any utility requirements, and then to grant it if it did.
so we need to look at this in 2 parts. Any discussion on the first part, which would be allowing the waiver to the driveway to be the width that is now maintained or whatever at this point, do for the right of way easement or whatever. Any discussion on that?
Have you contacted the person who owns the trailer?
I haven't. I don't know if Castleman River Ventures has contacted them or not.
I think it's probably the worthwhile, because like if they're, say they develop these cabins and have people going up and down and it starts getting potholing and stuff, like we get the calls like, who's gonna take care of my road? They're not playing for the gravel and all of that stuff. And also to see if they'd be willing to update their address. I don't know if it's permanent residence or if it's not. And it'd be nice for consistency for 911.
other concerns? Our motion to approve the waiver for the road as is.
I'll make that motion.
Motion second.
I'll second.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved, Chad. Now, the second's gonna be to try to waiver the, major subdivision to a minor subdivision, right?
Yeah, so major subdivision, that would require a road plan. It would require that road to be 12 foot wide, 6 inches of stone. They'd have to have a turnaround at the end of it, and there would be HOA documents for maintenance of that road. Those would be the main major subdivision requirements.
May I suggest that maybe have a caveat to the waiver to provide some sort of documents for the maintenance of that road?
I think we already voted on it.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
right now, the people, it's not gonna be an issue, but
Yeah.
if it ever sold off, it would become an issue.
Right, I don't think that would be a problem for Castle River Ventures
Right.
to be like, we'll have a maintenance agreement for the upgrade of the road, or the maintenance of the road.
I look at it like the major versus minor, we just waived the road size,
Right.
so it's kinda hard, you know what I mean? So you wanna go ahead and,
Well, it's still a 20-foot right of way, so there's still room
Right.
to construct a 12-foot. If we got into something bigger that required a 16-foot wide,
Right.
that would be an issue here. I mean, part of the reason why I think the right of way waiver is appropriate is because of the small size of the road.
Liz, do you have anything to say about this, as far as?
I don't see any issue with it, especially if Craig Ingram did the research and found the easements, so.
Everybody else okay with that? And you wanna put the caveat in there about the
I think it'd be worthwhile then to
road,
get calls.
road maintenance agreement or whatever?
I think that most lenders would look for one anyways and make you have it, so if you're continuing your title forward, it's gonna be required anyways.
Is everybody okay with that? Motion? Motion, second?
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved, Chad.
Okay?
And I guess if you need another meeting, you're good. Is that all we had on that part? 2 parts?
So Chad, you'll just shoot me the.
Yeah, so I'll proceed with this as a minor subdivision that I can sign in the office.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, you wanna do zoning appeals cases while we're
Yeah,
there?
let's first do those.
I guess we have, all we wanna talk about, you'll take the end of the meeting, we'll go talk about the winery.
Yeah, we can do that.
Bruce?
First one we have is VRA 38, application submitted by Kayla Evans for a variance to allow the construction of a residential addition to within 8 feet of the side property line. Property is located at 208 Upper Penn Point Brook Drive. Tax map 66, parcel 154, grid 24, zoned LR1. This case was one that we already heard at zoning appeals. They received a variance to build to 17 feet of the front and 10 feet of the side, and then proceeded to build 2 feet further to 8 feet of the line. And now they're asking forgiveness, basically, another variance to allow that extra 2 feet.
I mean, that seems like a lot of aggravation for 2 feet, but that's,
Well, yeah,
Right.
but they went beyond what they were permitted to do,
Right.
so they have to ask for it. and-
right, oh no, I agree, I'm just saying, to go through the process again.
Yeah,
Setback's typically 15 feet in that area.
so they're already at half that, and it's either gonna be, they're either gonna get granted a variance, or they're gonna have to take that corner off the property. The little blackened corner is the piece has encroached across the line. The original drawing did not have this bump out on it at all, which would have got it within required, or the asked for setback, the variance.
Bruce?
Self-created.
Yeah,
Anybody
that's
else
one
have
of
any
the,
comment?
what he's referring to is one of the standards in the zoning ordinance as a hardship can't be self-created.
Anybody have anything, send it on down, right?
Yeah, I sent the information out to everybody. So variances, you're not necessarily required to
Right.
comment on it. And a lot of the details of this come out in the hearing, so I think it's appropriate if you guys, if you see something alarming you want to comment on, you can, but you're not required to by the ordinance for variances.
Next,
Second case is a special exception number 507, application submitted by Outdoor Contractors Incorporated on behalf of Two Farms Incorporated, trading as Royal Farms.
what's the name?
So it's a special exception, required in order to construct a convenience store, and also an automobile service station. The property is located at Garrett Highway, at the corner of Garrett Highway and Glendale Road, right across from McDonald's.
The entrance, the Justine, when I'm looking at plans, right on the left-hand side, that's the entrance off of 219. Is that a one-way entrance or a two-way?
That is a one-way entrance.
Okay, that's what it looked like to me, so.
By demand of the State Highway Department. That has to be clearly marked and blocked to prevent any traffic from entering Garrett Highway from that parking lot.
Then you're talking about a private access drive. Why is that worded private access?
Well, this is undergoing review right now, this entire lot, so this would be the
Okay.
future Dollar General site. We have a major subdivision plan, the road, there's still comments I have that haven't been addressed. We've been looking at the road plan thing, so as that's come about, they have a potential buyer and understanding there's a special exception involved. They want to make sure that they can get permission to do this before we move forward, or they move forward with
So it's
any
an
sort
ongoing
of purchase.
process.
Yeah, but this would have
I
to be.
understand that was a lot, right?
Yeah, the lot has not been created yet, so, but we're aware of it, and it's
Right,
in
I just
the,
wondered why it said private. I mean, that just kind
it
of.
will be a road, it will come to you guys, because they are going to have to construct that, because anything that's not residential becomes major subdivision, so. But that part of it's in the works.
Does anybody see any issues with this? I know one thing, they're moving some dirt down there.
Yes.
Wow. Lot of dirt.
Yep.
Get it down. Bruce, you have anything to add to this one?
No, I think this is clear in the definitions within the zoning ordinance and the zoning board. It's a special exception, so it's allowed basically, and they can put requirements on it. Screening, lighting, hours of operation, the standard items that they can take a peek at.
Yeah, and the information.
Signage.
The information I sent everybody, special exceptions, it does say the word you shall, or that the board shall request an opinion from all of you. Now, you don't necessarily have to give one if you don't have concerns, but if there are anything, some of these bigger picture things about traffic and how it fits with the neighborhood, those are certainly legitimate things for the planning commission to comment on if they have any specific concerns they want the board to be aware of, or if you feel satisfied with it, you don't have to comment. But
The only concern I have about the whole thing is knowing the congestion there. When you talk about a one-way in, if tractor and trailers going in or big trucks, we even have that issue with areas sometimes, you know what I mean, where you got a trailer on the back of a truck, you know.
Attorney, can you?
The trail, that is gonna merely be a northbound 219 entrance only.
Right.
And I doubt very seriously that, the delivery trucks are gonna be utilizing that entrance ever.
What I'm talking about, like a dump truck with a low boy, you know, the bigger trailer, packing the bigger trailer, the guys that been there hauling boats, to fill up their boats. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you see it jams up a parking lot pretty quick, and that's why I was asking about, you know, I knew it was one way, but I just wanted to see if it's gonna be north. That makes sense, but then going out southbound, has to turn into the light and then come up the other private drive or whatever, right?
correct. Southbound would have to come up Glendale Road and enter from that side.
That private access drive, so that would have to be built to road standards.
Oh, no, there's no doubt
18
about
foot,
that, right,
2-foot
right.
shoulders at least.
But that's one of the concerns I have, because you know, it bottlenecks there anyway a good bit. You've got, you know, what's amazing is when people bring their, you know, 25-foot long boats to fill it up at a gas station. You don't want a trailer behind a 3/4, you know, ton truck, you know, and then when guys that work in the excavating business bring their machines in there to fill up stuff like that, you got those big trailers, and I just wanna make sure they'll be able to turn.
So the developer says they've been in contact with State Highway about this entrance, the one way. And then this entrance, State Highway actually has a pretty big right of way through here.
Oh, yeah, no,
Glendale Road.
the improvements are better, I just worry about how congested it will get at one point.
Yeah, so we're somewhat deferring to State Highway that they have looked at this. I have contacted them about this entrance, and they said they were okay with that for development. They put it in when they redid Glendale with the understanding that this was gonna be a commercial
And the one
entrance.
straight across, there's one for Alpine Village, right? On the page,
Yes,
the new entrance there.
yeah, that's Alpine Village over here.
Anybody want to put on ding on this? Bruce, you need anything from us on this? Need help with anything?
I have a question in terms of like, I don't know, you see people walking in this area a lot. I'm curious if there's any like contextual, like, improvements that could be made for like pedestrians getting to the store. Like, looks like it's very much for cars, and I'm trying to work on some cycling and stuff, and so, I don't know, looks like a tricky one if you were just to go and hoof it.
I'm not sure I'd have the courage to walk on that part of the road.
But you see a lot of people doing it.
Right, my office is right across the street, but I wouldn't have the courage to cross 219 and try to get over there.
They can, you know, provide some, you know, it looks like maybe there's a crosswalk or something, like provide some, you know, path to the store would be my request. Just contextually.
That would probably be a state highway request if you were gonna, add to that stoplight,
Or even on the Glendale Road side of things. I'm curious, like clearly there's a lot of issues on making that more accessible.
I think you'd almost have to, if you're gonna start down that road, you'd wanna have a pedestrian walk across 219 and across Glendale Road.
You do have that like boardwalk, but it's on the other side of 219. And it goes all the way to like the Castleton restaurant thing across the street, so.
You want to put,
Just a thought, I wanna put a plug in there, cause I see that missing.
you want to put that in as a request or a recommendation to the zoning appeals board that we
I think the.
look at the pedestrian crosswalk? That work?
Just don't wanna be a headache later.
Anything else on this one? Do we need to approve that recommendation or not?
You can make it a motion if you'd like to make it.
Motion for Sierra's recommendation for review pedestrian crosswalk at
Or just
219.
improving pedestrian like flow to the store, foot traffic.
Have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved, Chad.
Okay, I'll create a letter and send it to the board.
One more case, a variance application submitted by David and Cynthia Meyerberg for a variance to allow the construction of a deck to, within 0 feet of the rear property line. Property is located at 270 Ezra Savage Road, tax map 66, parcel 218, grade 24, LR1 zoning. And there you can see that they recently purchased this house. The house was built, I believe it's about 12, is it 11 or 12 feet from the rear property line? 12 feet. So, right here. So they wanna build a deck in there, basically right to the property line. Decks can be built to 5 feet from the rear presently. To build it that far, need a variance. The statement was they basically wanna build it big enough to get, table and chairs comfortably on it, and
Am I correct in saying you can put a patio out there though without,
I could put a patio out there, to the line without a building permit or a variance.
Patios are specifically listed as a permitted projection that have no
Right.
setback.
At ground level.
is that, and I'm laying down, I know I've seen this before, is there a product that has to be, do we specify what type of product that can be, or what?
The patio,
Like, does that have to be concrete, or can it be concrete, or can it be pavers, or can it be?
as far as we're concerned, it's more about the fact that it's ground level, so it's not a structure out of the ground obstructing view. So as long as it's ground level, we don't really have any specific requirements. We would grant leniency on setbacks for that.
I sold them that property, and it has no impact on neighboring properties at all, regardless of what you do with between the trees and the way the other houses are already built. It already has, it literally goes right out, the land goes right out to where they're talking about there, and then drops off. It's almost like it already has something there anyways.
Any other suggestions, complaints, or concerns on this one?
It all says proposed, but we know that's as built.
Yeah, that's.
It's a
that should be
2001.
about right with that house.
There's the
Sorry.
as-built. It's actually, I think, was it 12.41 from the Penelec, the as-built?
Yeah, and they have the buy now too, right? Pardon? They have the buy now too, right?
They do now. Yeah, that previous plat didn't show up. It would have probably been pre-buy down.
You can scroll down a couple more maps and there's a overhead view of the facility, the next one.
Okay, thanks.
There you go.
This 2462 plus 100 line order.
Probably. Here's 2462 contour.
I'm sorry, the wavy one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Pass it on down. Thank you, Bruce. Let's get the Sierra on her, transportation priority list.
I have 2 more copies. Well, you'll see it soon enough. Maybe a better version of it.
So I took like this big long list and then I thought about it and like consulted with SHA and like, got it down to like 10 items. So the top of the letter, so we have to request our transportation priorities to MDOT every year. This is kind of like one of the processes that gets things done regarding like either state grants or the state roads that we don't have, jurisdiction over. But we're like, hey state, these things are a concern to us. This is how we can address those. So first they gave us some bikeways and rec trails funding, so I'm thanking them for that. And because those things aren't done yet, I'm expecting they'll generate more projects, so kind of like letting them know, hey, there should be other requests stemming from these projects in the future. And then I would like to put in a Safe Streets for All grant for a demonstration project looking at Oakland and Garrett County, looking at various corridors and improving traffic flow, reducing fatalities, and approving active transportation access, so, bike and ped. Still working on that application, it's due in April. I'll probably ask for an endorsement there. And then, so the first project is funding for US 219 North connecting to Pennsylvania. That's at the top of our list. Right now, they have design and right-of-way funding, but the transportation trust fund, they took construction off the table for the time being, but we're well on track. So just mainly just saying this is still number one for us. Let's keep this moving. The second one is safety improvements at Traders Landing. So this actually spans from the bridge at on 219 all the way to Traders Landing and maybe a little past that. We're going to look at, we had a meeting with stakeholders to make it a one-way in, one-way out. They did borings, and they can widen the roadway and restrike the road to provide a center turning lane throughout that whole area and then also have a better way for pedestrians to cross there at Traders Landing specifically. So we're requesting design funding this year, and next year we'll request the construction funding, and should be done the following summer. And then Grantsville, they had a concept plan for a sidewalk that took from the east side of town and connected to Spruce Village and Spruce Forest and the State Park. So this is at the top of our list. We'd like them to continue with the design and construction funds for that. Oakland Bypass is still on the list, and hopefully it'll get funded in some way. It's consistent with our comprehensive plans. I'd like to reapply for the Lockland Trail accessibility enhancements. Last year put a Rec Trails grant to redeck the boardwalk, and also right now there's bollards in front of the trail to prevent four-wheelers from going on, but if you're in a wheelchair or have a mobility aid, you can't use the trail. Plus I'd like to make it wider in spots, so if you have two people going this way, there's a place to pull over essentially. So I'm going to apply for some design funds to make sure that can happen. Then we always support our transit operations. If they had any specific capital requests, I was going to update that line, but so far this seems to be working for them. Fork Run, we have a new easy trail, and the rest of the trails are very difficult, so I'd like to put in a grant for an intermediate trail. So that's for that. In a 2019 traffic improvement study, there was suggestions to change the intersection at Sand Flat Road and Maryland 135. So this is getting SHA to put that on their radar. And Grantsville, they're working on housing development on 669. This is for sidewalks to that. And then lastly, this one I'm questioning where it goes on the list. For a feasibility study to connect Kitzmiller to Wolf Den State Park in a safe way, but also as an economic development kind of opportunity for the town. So, and that's what I have. Any questions? So
Quite a lot of work.
The work is to get everybody to sign it. So, so hopefully we can get these projects done, cross them off, and add new stuff. So that's the plan.
Anybody have any concerns with Sierra's work on this? We need to approve this, Chad?
Yeah, you would approve it and then make a recommendation that the county commissioners approve it.
Anything else before we go forward? Any other discussion? Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
All right,
Nice work.
thank you.
Good luck.
All right, thank you.
Good job.
All right, Chad, we wanna talk back an unfinished business about the, winery.
I think everybody was here last week except Billy, so I'll give a brief recap. We had a gentleman, Mike Ohm, submit a amendment request for the ordinance to add farm wineries into the ordinance in the residential areas. We talked about it as a planning commission and felt that was something, a little bigger picture thing that we should spend some time with rather than just voting up or down on that. What we decided on last time, that this would be a special exception in all districts. It would be 20 acres minimum size requirement, 75-foot front setback, 100-foot side and rear setbacks. Also, they would potentially serve food in conjunction with it, and they would have a certain amount of retail. So does anybody have any further thoughts about the things that we talked about last time? Those were the things that everybody seemed to be in agreement on.
One question with that, on the retail aspect
Mhm.
of it, would the retail be limited to things associated
Yes.
with wine?
And I think last week I said, well, I'll try to work on something and have something for everybody. It was a lot harder than I thought. I've been looking at other jurisdictions, so I don't have anything specific. I have some ideas about things. So those were, my concerns are probably, we don't allow taverns, we don't allow restaurants in these residential areas. It's very limited. It's mostly residential. So if we want to allow something farm related, how do we make sure that that's the way it stays? I think we all kind of maybe have in our idea of what we would like, but how do we keep it from turning into something that is more retail, is more of a restaurant use? I think certainly the retail would be limited to branded items, something to do with that. The other issue is, the growing season here is not conducive to growing all of your product here. And the other thing we talked about was expanding this to be breweries, cideries, other things that produce alcohol that could be produced there. So that's the part I'm struggling with. How do we make sure it is linked to the farm, but we do it in a reasonable manner? I don't think we can require everything to come from this farm. That's probably not going to happen. This is not Napa, it's not that type of region. So how do we do that? What's a reasonable requirement there? And that's the part I'm kind of struggling on. We may be able to do it if we link it to their alcohol license. They may at first be more or less a retail license. The gentleman we talked to said he would probably be getting his wine from someplace else and branding it with the farm. So that would be more or less, I believe, a retail license at that point. And at some point in the future, he may then switch with the state to have a production license where he's blending in some of the product. So it may be something like that we could set a time frame and say within a certain amount of time, they would have to have at least some production occurring from product grown on site.
His original letter offered like 2 years, didn't it?
It did.
Within
Yeah, he
2
came
years.
in and talked to us again, kind of shared some of his concerns that, he wants to do this, but, he doesn't know how the grapes are going to grow, basically. So he's hesitant to purchase a large amount of equipment and invest in that till he sees how this is going to go. So he's hoping to maybe have a little bit of flexibility. That would certainly be his goal, that he plants the grapes and starts to incorporate that into production, but he's not sure how that's going to work. And it's not something, if we pass something, it needs to be something that we as a planning office can easily enforce. We're not going to be experts on that and go out and look and see how the grapes are being squeezed. It has to be something that we can enforce in a simpler manner than that. Because once we allow it, I don't think any of us want to deny it in the future. We want to have something that's going to be reasonable that they can do and also reasonable that we can enforce and administer.
Does a business or a winery kind of require somebody to live there on the property too?
I don't know that would be the case.
I mean, as I'm sitting back here, I'm listening and everything, and I'm thinking like, the positive for something like this is more from the standpoint of if you're attracting people to move and live here and create something like that doesn't require, a big hardship on neighboring properties and things like that. But, that'd be good to know if it does require somebody like full-time stewardship, because if it does, then I think that's a general positive thing, because we need more population that live here.
I mean, that is something you could make it accessory. There has to be a house there or something. I mean, that would be something you could tie there. I did look. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's could be a little bit tricky, because if you were to live on the property, I don't know. That's
Yeah, we have to be careful with all that.
Yeah.
I'm throwing it out. That's
Well,
something we could do.
I'm asking questions more than
Yeah.
I'm making a comment. I'm thinking of, like,
Yeah.
how do you do things to improve our economy in Garrett County, and making sure that we don't step in the way of things that are not gonna be harmful to neighboring properties and things? Is is this something that could grow into a big thing for Garrett County? That would, is my point, and would it potentially drive in people to live here, maybe? That's all, I don't have.
I did go back and look at the 2022 comprehensive plan a little bit, and there are several mentions there about agritourism and doing farm to table things. So that is something that we generally, the planning commission, when we put that together, was generally in favor of. It didn't specifically mention, wineries or anything like that I could find. But I think conceptually, we were all kind of in favor of doing that and looking for new opportunities. We just have to keep in mind this is going in traditionally residential areas, so how do we protect?
I am totally all about agritourism, and I really loved the idea of the farm winery when I read it, until the conversation shifted into like the purchasing of wines from elsewhere to then sell on which I get, that in that circumstance you might not know how the grapes are going to grow, and you might not know when you're going to have product, and there's all these things, but like, it also seems like that could be used as like kind of like a loophole where somebody's going to open a farm winery, but then they're not really selling their own wine. They're just importing wine from other places.
That's the conversation Chad and I had earlier about, is that's the whole, if that comes, then it open up a whole can of worms where you have to go outside the ag business in a sense and try to figure out. But the thing is, this guy that was here the other day, or the last meeting, I think he's gonna try to figure out, okay, can Garrett County sustain 6 months of grape growing, you know what I mean? Or 6 months of apple growing, whatever it is that they use, and figure out if it's even feasible, you know what I mean? But the only way I can, Chad and I think that was a concern Chad had, is if it isn't, then it changes how we have to look at this.
In a further email, he had mentioned about, perhaps allowing for a retail beer wine license to be issued initially, and then have a time for the conversion to a Maryland State farm winery license, like 5 years or so. And that's, I think you've kind of summarized my main concern, is how do we tie this to that agricultural use. Agriculture is permitted. I think we've all kind of agreed that some expansion of that into agritourism is, or farm to table type things, is that general concept is okay, but how do we keep it from being a loophole that somebody says, well, I'm just going to sell, I have somebody put a label on it, but I'm just basically a wine store or a restaurant.
And the other thing I thought about after we talked, Chad, was, you could actually have a farm in, say, Northern Virginia, or someplace where it's warmer and they can grow the grapes, then you bring them into the wine up here. That's another thing I thought about, because, it's still his product. He designed, he can get whatever grapes or whatever he's using, and then he's gonna grow them in Virginia because it's a better growing area, and then bring them in. That's another area we'd have to look at. But how would you even know how that was gonna get out? Did you go to Walmart and buy the grapes? You know what I mean?
Yeah, once you get into more of a manufacturing type use, those uses are not typically permitted in the ag resource and rural.
And that's what happened last meeting, Bill. I don't know if you were here for it or not, but they started talking about the manufacturing part of it, which opens up another can of worms, you know what I mean? In my opinion. And I think, I hear what Julie's saying. I think it's gonna be, and I like the concept of the winery, because I've been down to Wintergreen and places like that where they really are part of the community, and they bring in tourism, and especially in the summertime, late in the fall, places like that. So I hope there's some way we can figure it out without too much grief.
Yeah, a lot of the other zoning ordinances in the state that I looked at, they tie it pretty heavily to production initially, which I think is a challenge more for us here with our growing season and what's going to grow here. So I'm just not quite sure how to.
Can you do test cases on stuff like that, where you issue one and see if it works?
Well, if it doesn't, then we'd have to re-amend the ordinance to say we didn't like that, and then you basically have a one grandfathered nonconformity if we would go back and say it's not permitted.
So we're in favor, in theory, we're in favor of this scenario, an on-site wine production. That's the key. We don't want to make it so they just bring wine in from other areas, right?
And I'll put that out to the commission to see.
So if that is the case, then don't we tie it to we tie it to the requirement that they do have on-site production. I don't know that it's really our problem if they can't, if they decide they can't grow grapes and they can't have water.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, do we want to allow a certain amount of time to be established? You know, that it may take a little while, or
If our goal is to have them on-site production, no.
Well, I mean, they're gonna have to have a period of time to see if the grapes will grow, I
You
would
could,
say,
Yeah.
We
or,
don't have to license them to sell anything during that
Right,
period.
right. That's my thing is, if you have a farm winery and you're growing the grapes there to create the wine product, why would you open up and start selling
Till you have product.
until you have your own product? I guess I'm just like a purist in that way, but like, why would you open a farm winery saying you're growing these grapes, but then your wine's coming from other producers and other?
but isn't that how they're doing it in other counties? Like, aren't other counties doing it that way, where they are bringing in certain portions of wine from other places? I thought is the way that we talked about it before. I mean, my opinion either way, sure, I would like to see them grow the grapes and make their whole product there. I just don't know how feasible that really is.
well, could you allow them to bring other grapes in? Not wine that's already been made and manufactured, but allow them to bring other grapes in to use in the interim. And he'd still manufacture. You know, he'd still make the wine, but just bring the grapes in.
Right. I mean, I don't know anything about making
Sell the
wine.
other stuff to pay for, to cover some, you know, to have some money come in, not while they're creating their own thing. The whole time we've been talking about this, I keep thinking of Deer Park water. And thinking like, how much of Deer Park water is
It's
actually
really
made?
Deer Park.
Right? And that's where it started, right? And you go anywhere in the country, it's not coming from Garrett County.
I think I kind of agree with the concept. You maybe allow it to start, but then that gets harder for us to enforce. If we go 3 years down the road, how do we determine, okay, now you're producing enough that you've kind of shifted over to more production, and we agree it's coming from that farm.
Right, you can't force that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I
Yeah,
don't
that
think we
gets
want to
tough.
be in the wine business
So
necessarily.
do we really care if the wines are, if the grapes are grown here, as long as they produce the wine here?
Well, that's what I was trying to say.
Well-
If he grows the wines at, say, at Julie's house in Virginia, and he brings them back up to his manufacturing facility, his winery, and puts it in there, is that gonna be okay? That's what I was trying to point
Well,
out.
for
I
instance,
kind of,
go ahead.
I feel like we're kind of going the opposite direction because the land is allowed agricultural use. But, which is why we were thinking about making an exception for a farm winery. Not because they were producing the wine there, but because they were growing the grapes there, because it was in agricultural use.
I think he still has to grow the grapes there, and you're still gonna have to grow product there. We just don't know how it's gonna grow compared to getting him started in business or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying go to some vendor and buy grapes. I'm saying that to be a true in-house business, he has to grow those grapes himself, right? On a piece of property that is conducive to growing grapes. Whether it be his property in Garrett County or property in Virginia, that's his product that he designed. So if he made a purple grape and it makes his wine, and that's what stays in his lane, is that great? But if it's grown in Virginia and he brings it to Garrett County, is that gonna be a problem? Because he can't grow as many grapes here. I don't know. That's why I'm just asking dumb questions.
Well, I think if somebody was bringing corn in from somewhere else and said, I want to start canning corn on my property, we would look at that more as a manufacturing use if they're not growing it there. If they're growing it on the property, we say that's all just your farm stuff you're growing and selling. So again, because this is in the residential areas and ag resource, that's where we have to be careful, because those more hardcore manufacturing or processing uses are not permitted. Taverns, restaurants. So this is starting to get elements of all those things where we have to be a little more careful with it.
Right, it's like getting all those elements and also kind of losing the ag use, potentially, because he doesn't know if the grapes can grow. And
So then it's simple. He can't make wine till he grows his own grapes to make it.
that can
I've
be.
done question, can you grow grapes in a greenhouse?
You can't grow them out.
Well, I
how big a
mean-
greenhouse? You probably can, but
There's that existing winery, like, as you're, like Friendsville, right? Do
Yeah,
they
it's
grow
Deep
their own
Creek
grapes?
Cellars or something.
Do
I don't
they?
know what their situation is.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's that, new place called the Root or whatever, is that your name?
It's in Friendsville, Deep
Yeah.
Creek Winery or whatever. Do they grow their
I
own
don't-
grapes?
I can't answer that question,
Well, but that climate down in Friendsville might be slightly different than,
Sure.
I mean, it's several hundred feet below, isn't it?
I think, so let's just summarize. So looking at it from Julie's perspective, she's looking at it from growing it on site, producing on site, being all in at that site. Is that correct?
Definitely growing on site. I don't know that much about wine production, if like that's a thing. You know, if you can send your grapes out to be bottled by, like a co-packer. I don't even know if it's called a co-packer, but you know what I mean? Like, so I'm more concerned about the ag use of the land, the grapes being grown there, for it to be a farm winery versus the manufacturing being done there.
So you don't have any problem taking the grapes off the property to some manufacturer to put in a bottle and bring back.
No, yeah, I don't have a problem
We
with that.
can't force that to,
Right,
we have no way, we have no way to control that, you know.
right. Then that's kind of like what I was saying about bringing the grapes from here, manufacture them inside his building and putting them in a bottle in his building. How do you control where the grapes come from, or, you know, they're not being grown on his property at that point? I mean, I love the idea, I really do. I just don't know how we're gonna, what's the plan
well, that's what Chad said. Then it's manufacturing, not growing grapes in ag property.
You have to discern somehow from true manufacturing and agribusiness, right? I mean, that's where we're getting hung up on.
Right, and that-
We don't wanna see a wine factory on
Right.
the Sandflat Road, but we wouldn't
It
mind.
all came down to,
Yeah.
I think that Debbie or somebody said something about the manufacturing part of it, right, last time.
Yeah, I
When
believe
that came
this-
up, that's what started to throw my, head in mind, because it said,
I
okay,
think
is it
it's
manufacturing or is it agricultural? You know what I mean,
the way
if
it's
you got a dairy
classified.
farm, is it dairy farm manufacturing or a dairy farm? You know, is it a farm or are you manufacturing milk? I don't know, I mean, it's kinda like, how do you define it?
I mean, didn't we talk about before, like it was the way that it was classified with the state of Maryland alcoholic beverage law? Like how, you know, what they were allowed to do there?
I believe so. I think there's a difference between, like, if he wanted to have it branded somewhere else and sell it there,
Yeah.
they treat that more as just retail.
Yes.
And then eventually, if you were producing at least some of it on site, then it turns into more of the manufacturing license. So that was one idea, is maybe you give them a certain amount of time, within 2 years, you've converted to a manufacturing license where at least some of that product is grown on site. I don't know enough about winemaking either. I don't know that you could grow all of your grapes here. I don't know if that's feasible or not, or if it's always going to, best case scenario would be some sort of a blend. I don't know. And same thing, whether it's hops or cider or anything, I don't know exactly how that works.
I see your wheels turning, man,
You were on to something there a second ago, it's not exactly the same thing, it's kind of backwards, but like Larry could probably straighten me out on this, but a dairy farmer, he milks his cows on the farm, and then somebody comes and picks up the raw
Picks it up,
milk. and goes
pasteurized, puts it in a box,
Pasteurizes it
right.
somewhere else, you know.
puts it in his bottle, then he's in, right.
We
So
don't have a
I'm
problem.
not trying to to simplify it to the point where it didn't make sense, but I was just trying to make that as an example. That would be what I was talking about with, if you ship it off someplace else, have a bottle, then bring it back. I think Julie's concern is making sure that the product is grown on, if it's doing agribusiness, make sure the product is grown on that piece of property. So what the guy's saying that brought this in needs to find out whether he can even grow the type of grapes that he wants to grow to make his wine
Yeah.
in Garrett County. So now we gotta drop back and say, he wants that, how much time did he say, 2 years?
Potentially, yeah. So, and I didn't tell him to be here to answer questions this
Right.
month. I was kind of busy, and I thought this would be a little more of a broad question. So the two things I want to keep in mind is, there is a point that if we stray too much from what he asked, we deserve to give him an answer of yes or no. So even if everybody here says, no, we don't want to do that, we'll have him here and you can vote on that. But, so this I was anticipating a little more broad, but we do need to think if we let it in, we're not just, anytime we're amending the ordinance, it's not just for that one person, we're creating a new category and then we have to anticipate, okay, what about all the next ones? You know, how are we going to treat them? So certainly he initiated this, but we're thinking broadly about it as well. So I guess I'll put this out.
Another month or what?
Yeah, and anybody else that has any ideas, I'm open. So I'll put this out. Is it, if only part of that production is coming from the farm, is that something that you all agree with, or do you think it all needs to come from the farm to be treated as?
I got an idea. Get one of the Garrett Transit buses, and I'll take the planning commission on a field trip. We'll go check a couple of them out.
Yeah, we need to do a little bit more research.
Yeah, I think so. So you guys put together a list of all the local wineries and breweries.
I mean, I think all of us would like to see that happen, right? We would like to see him grow the grapes there. But, I mean, we just don't know, and for him, it's gonna be a significant financial, contribution from his life, so I just don't know what you would say there.
I mean, you've been around grape arbor, you know how they grow. There's, some of them are sour or thin, you know what I'm saying? But you're talking about a specialty grape that you're growing.
I'm not sure you can limit him to just saying he has to grow them all, because Garrett County, the weather and everything, you might get a late freeze and he wouldn't get any grapes in a year, and there he is.
I mean, I know they grow in Winchester, I know they grow in places like that are, a little more modern.
I think you have to have some leeway there to let him bring grapes in somewhere else.
Back to how you police that, is it percentage or
That's
whatever, you know what I mean?
That's the issue, is how do you control that? He says, I just can't grow them, so I'll just bring them in, so.
Yeah, I thought about maybe doing it from the local tri-state area or something, but again, who's going to enforce that? Who's going to check the grapes and who's going to do all that? So.
We could say, okay, bring your grapes in, but you have to have local master wine, and
Yeah, have the grape enforcer.
Have the master grape.
Don't you kind of make it very limited anyways by the fact that your minimal, didn't you say 20 acres?
Yeah, I think what we had come up with, and what he suggested, and what everybody seemed to agree with, was 20 acres. I think we could also clarify that that's agriculturally assessed land. So that's going to minimize the total number of properties. But, if there's a loophole and you're not making anything on the farm, it could be a loophole where somebody says, well, I'll get some wine, now I get to have a tasting room, now I'm basically running like a little tavern there, so.
And I mean, think about it, we're only talking about the watershed. If they're outside the watershed, they can do whatever they want anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, if
So-
the guy's on Sand Flat Road, he's darn near out of the watershed anyway.
I
His
think
neighbor
property-
next door to him can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I think he's the border. I think
Yeah.
his property's the last one in, so.
Maybe they should meet up.
So I think that's what we have to keep in mind. Those are the only areas in the county with these protections for residential areas. So how can we find a way to do this in a manner that protects that?
If the deciding factor is the grapes have to be grown on site and the product has to be produced on site, then that's the guideline. If he's an entrepreneur and he wants to take his chance, he's going to have to get it to that point before we license him. I don't see the problem. It's not our responsibility to judge his financial risk or anything. If this is what we want as a board, that's the way it is, and if you want to do it, do it. If not, that's not the right way to say it.
Well, I could reach back out to him and say, we had more of a general discussion, and that was the main point of concern. See if he has any further ideas, and I could try to research other ways to see if there's any. Obviously, I think what we'd all like to see is, you've planted all your hops and grapes or whatever, and you're growing it all there. That may not be totally feasible. So I'll present that to him, and maybe in the meantime, see is there a solution maybe in between those two kind of extremes. I think all of us, I'm sensing everybody's concerned about if there's no production there, is it really a farm winery? I mean, it's just then it's a production facility on a farm,
And production means grapes grown.
I think that's what we have to define all that. Yeah.
Here's my whole point.
Mhm.
He, based upon what we're saying here, he could go next door and manufacture everything there and bring it back on his property. Is he legal or is he not legal?
I mean, couldn't he just buy his neighbor's house and do
Or
it
he
over
could go
there?
He could just find a building somewhere else and produce everything and bring it back. Is that okay? I'm just like, I look at this and I'm like, okay, how many properties are there in the watershed that even have 20 acres?
It's a pretty good many of them.
But that are suitable for this kind
But
of
how
thing.
many people are gonna, and maybe there's other, and I think the main thing you said that has my wheels turning is people find other ways for loopholes for other things that might be harmful. I'm less concerned about the wine guy because the wine guy, if he doesn't make something that's kick butt, it's not gonna work anyways. It's gonna fail and that'll be the end of that. But point being is that if it does work, and maybe they can make great grapes in 5 months or whatever they need to make, I don't know. And, it could be a good thing too.
Well, I will tell him what kind of the way the discussion went today. So that's the main concern, is that production. See if he can come up with some other ideas, and I'll try to keep looking at different other jurisdictions and see if there's some middle ground there maybe that ties it to that farm, but maybe is something that we could actually regulate and say, yeah, maybe we'll give you a little bit of time to convert, but I'll relay those concerns to him as well. And then if anybody has any great ideas, please let me know.
That sound good? Everybody good with that?
One more thing though, when you talk about your fear of it turning into a pub or something like that, is there some comparisons to be drawn between like this use and the wedding venues that we've heard recently in the watershed? You know what I mean?
Those are permitted, or permitted with special exceptions. So we do have a category for banquet hall and catering facility. That's special exception. You can have food. It's at the same rate. You have to have parking like a restaurant. So we do allow that. And the other retail we allow in all the areas is neighborhood convenience. So you could have a small, I think it's 1,500 square foot of retail space with a special exception. So it's not unprecedented that we would have a kind of a gathering space and have some retail in these residential areas. So it's not something that's totally
So
unprecedented.
you could go about it another way, maybe.
Potentially, yeah. The catering facility is typically events only, so you potentially could do something like that where it's more of an event type thing where you have scheduled tastings. We always have to be careful with those because if you're just open 9 to 5 every day, then you're a restaurant or a tavern. The other thing would be like we have the planning commission Christmas party. There's one thing. If everybody heads there at 5 every evening for dinner, it's something else. So we have to be careful with that.
I'm not suggesting, I'm just kind of warning, or kind of bring that up.
Yeah.
Well, and this is only one part of it. Like the other part of it too is the liquor license and the way that they have that with the state of Maryland and what they're allowed to do there. So, I mean, to me, it seems like so few properties could actually do this. But, then do we talk about bourbon and other things like that? I mean, I don't know. People are going to probably come to us for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think once we open it up, it could expand.
I don't know anything about bourbon, how it's made or anything like that.
More research.
Any other things, anything else, Chad, you can think of?
I don't think so.
Anybody else? That's a good discussion on that. I mean, I think we're all for the winery thing, but I think we just got to figure out how to make it work, and it was good.
Well, I'll continue research, and again, if anybody has any suggestions, I appreciate it.
Well, if you need somebody to go on a road trip, let me know.
Okay.
Anything else? Have a nice week, folks. See you next time.
Thanks.